Oh, nice. We just got a really nice comment from Johnny also in the chat group. And I think many of us, like what Rabab has just shared, I'm pretty sure that many of us can relate to this. So, yeah, thanks again for the courage to share this. And I would say now we're moving on, Chris. We have not met in person yet. And still, I'm very excited that you decided to be part of this amazing excellence convention. So, thank you so much for being with us and for having decided to make an impact to people all around the world. Stage is yours.
Thank you, Janine, for inviting me. It's really, really a pleasure to be here with all these other coaches that I met before, like Adrian, like Johnny, Kathy, that was my client when she used to live here in Shenzhen. So I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces here. Let me start like introducing myself. So this is me, my husband, and my 4 kids in 2019. And we are all from Brazil, but I have one kid living with me here in China with us for 10 years. I have been living here for 10 years. 2 kids in Australia, 1 kid in Portugal. But last year we could not be together because of COVID, and we are a little frustrated about that. But besides being a wife and a mom, what I am very proud of, I worked for more than 25 years in the communication field in Brazil as a communication director for big companies like Coca-Cola. And I started a second career 6 years ago in China as a life coach. And I just got my ICF PCC certification last year in December. And I really need to thank Adrian because my journey towards the certification started with his NLP training in Bali. And I'm lucky because I went to Bali. Now you have to have that online, but I was in Bali and it was really awesome. So that said, make sure you have something to take notes during this workshop because you are going to need it. And we have 45 minutes, include Q&A. So I'm really time conscious right now, okay? So I want to invite you to picture yourself in this situation. Let's say that you arrive late in a meeting, online or in person, and your boss starts to yell at you in front of everybody. Why in the hell are you late? I'm so exhausted of this kind of behavior from you. Shit. Now I want you to think and be really honest with yourself. What kind of reaction do you think you would probably have? I'm going to try to help you. Would you cry? Would you yell back? Would you leave? Apologize? Halt? Would you try to please the boss? Would you try to blame the traffic or another person? If you want to write down the chat, it's great. If you don't want it, just keep your answer with you because we are going to address this situation during the rest of the workshop. I think I cannot see the chat, right? So I don't know if people are sharing.
I can say, read it out loud otherwise, in case anybody feels like sharing. Charlie said, I would be angry.
Okay, guys, this is the kind of situation when what we call the saboteurs or the voices inside of our head show up. And what is a saboteur? The saboteur is someone who pretends to be your friend, but who's screwing you behind your back. And it happens all the time in this world that is so competitive. But sometimes we can be our own saboteurs because our mind, unconsciously make us react in a harmful way. Our mind unconsciously make us react in a harmful way, harmful to ourselves and to others. And they show up when we are in this kind of situation, when we feel uncomfortable, a situation when we feel threatened. And then we lose control and we react from another position, a position of fear. And that's when the caveman inside of us shows up. Because at that time, if something's move like behind the tree, for the caveman, it's better to think that's a tiger than it's just the wind or a bird. Because at that time, everything was a matter of life or death. But we still have this caveman living inside of us. Want to see something really funny? What do you fear the most, snakes or cars? We can be hit by a car at any moment. We live in big cities where snakes are in the zoo or in the restaurants. But we still fear snakes more. So what does it all mean? It means that the saboteurs or these voices inside of our heads, they are a protection mechanism that is there to protect us. But if you are not cavemen anymore, to protect us from what? And then we need to go further. We need to go in the past, a little bit in the past. Probably heard about Yuval Harari, the guy that wrote the book Sapiens. And he explains that when the human species start to evolve, the brain increased in size, but the hip decreased, so we could stand up in 2 feet. What happened then? That women and babies, they began to die during child labor because of the size of the head and the hip. So to be able to survive and keep the species alive, Mother Nature's that always find a way, made us start to be born premature. We are all born premature. And we are all born vulnerable. No exception. If we are left by ourselves, we die. So we are programmed for physical survival. We are programmed to make other people take care of us. We are very cute. We make funny faces. We cry very loud in a very high pitch. Right, moms? Moms here, they know what I'm talking about. And they cry to remind people that we must be fed and we must be kept clean. But what's really interesting is that we are also programmed for emotional survival because we are raised by imperfect adults that are also scared and that are also trying to protect themselves. And how do we do that? Let's give an example. If a kid has a father who is alcoholic, so he doesn't know what to expect every day when the father arrives home. This kid, he can maybe become a perfectionist, try to be the perfect kid. So maybe the father, when he comes home, he's not going to yell at him. He's going to have his homework done. Everything is perfect to protect himself from the father. Maybe he can become a pleaser to guarantee that the father still loves him. Or maybe he can become a controller to make sure that he knows when the father comes home so he can protect himself. The fact is that when we grow up, we don't need the mechanisms, these mechanisms, both anymore. We don't need to cry for food. But the emotional mechanisms are so internalized into us that you can't see that anymore. And we keep repeating the same bad behaviors. And worse than that, we start to believe that this is the way I am. Oh, this is me. Oh, I'm just like my father. My father is like that too. It's genetic. But it's not true. This was something that you had to develop. So thanks God that there is this guy, Mr. Shihad Shami, that created this framework called the saboteurs. He came up with the 10 most common ways of self-sabotage. And you can take the test online for free. I have the link here. But I want to invite you right now to do a quick one, okay? So prepare your notebooks because I'm going to introduce to you the 10 saboteurs. And you can grade accordingly to how much you identify yourself with this behavior. So I think a little bit different from Adrian's scale. Here's from 0 to 10. 0, I totally disagree. And 10, I totally agree. 5 is neutral. I don't agree, I don't disagree, or I don't know. And you have the whole 1 to 9 grade in between. Okay? So the first one is the judge. And this one, guys, you don't need to think too much. Just check 10 because everybody has the judge in the highest level. Okay? We are at the end of this event, and I'm sure that everybody has his opinion about the speakers, the organization, people that didn't turn on the cameras, people that write too much in the chat. We are judging all the time. And this is the way we protect ourselves from the two main fears that everybody has. And Maria Pastonelli mentioned that in her talk. The fear of not being loved and the fear of not being good enough. This is the universal fears that everybody has, everybody have. And the judge, he criticizes in 3 different ways. The first one is judging the other person. So let's take the example of the boss that yells to you. So the boss yells at me and I say, I arrived late because I was in another meeting and these guys there, they don't respect time. I'm blaming other people and not me to protect myself. I can't judge the environment to protect myself. Oh, I arrived late because this laptop that the company provides to us sucks, okay? So I couldn't get the Wi-Fi. Or we can judge ourselves to protect the environment. And we destroy our self-esteem. And this is the Collins talk. That's his talk, really beautiful about it this morning. So I say, I arrived late because I'm a procrastinator. I'm really sorry. And most of the time, we blame ourselves for things that they are not our fault. Okay? That said, let's go to the other 9 saboteurs. And now we start to grade. What I'm going to do is to read 5 main characteristics, because I think it's enough for you to understand the profile. But if you take the online test, you're going to have much more information, okay? So here is just like an overview. Another thing, don't think too much, okay? Just check the first thing that comes to your mind. Don't use your rational mind or logic, okay? Just use your intuition. And another tip is, we can have different saboteurs at home and at work. But because you are in the business room, right? Let's talk about work today, okay? So the second one is the controller. I need to take charge and control situations and people's actions. I feel very anxious and impatient when that is not possible. I can intimidate others with my in-your-face communication. I feel angry when people don't do what I tell them to do. And I push people beyond their comfort zone, and I am very proud of it. Okay, from 0 to 10, how much do you identify yourself with that? Third one, the hyperachiever. Dependent on constant, I feel my value when I have a good performance and I achieve my goals. I can be a workaholic and I'm very focused on external success. I'm very conscious about my image and I keep people in a safe distance. I can be very competitive. Life is about achieving objectives. Fourth, the stickler or perfectionist. I have a very strong need for order and organization. I believe that right is right, wrong is wrong, and I know the right way. I believe that if you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. I feel I always have to fix the work that other people do. The hyper-rational. I have an intense focus on the rational processing of everything. When people express their emotions to me, I feel so uncomfortable. I can be perceived as cold and distant. I believe emotions can stop me from achieving my objectives. And it's not easy for me to feel empathy for others. The hypervigilant. I am always worried about the things that could go wrong. I feel nobody can see the danger signals that I see, so I have to protect them. I am often anxious with chronic doubts about myself and others, and it's hard for me to trust people. The pleaser. I am always trying to please other people because I want them to like me. I frequently put the needs of others ahead of my own needs, and I get resentful because they don't say thank you. It's hard for me to say no when someone asks me a favor. I sometimes do things that are not my job just to help my coworkers. The restless. I can't rest and I need to be constantly doing something. I always think that there is something more important or funnier than what I'm doing right now. Sometimes I feel like I'm wasting time doing what I'm doing and I lose focus. I'm always looking for something more excited than what I'm doing right now. More exciting than what I'm doing right now. The victim. I am very connected to my feelings, especially the negative ones. When I am criticized or misunderstood, I tend to withdraw, pout, and sulk. When things get tough, I want to crumble and give up. I sometimes feel very lonely, even when I am with my family or friends. And the last one, the avoider. I hate conflict and I avoid to deal with unpleasant tasks. I say yes to a thing that I don't want to do because I prefer to say yes than create a scene. Sometimes I downplay the importance of real problems. I can be too much of a procrastinator. And I am so focused on the positive side of facts that I forget that I have to take care of the bad ones too. Now I have something that if you are still in doubt, I have an example here that I created, like at work. Let's pretend that we have like a sales team meeting, okay? And the director tells the sales guys that I think we are going to lose our main customer. The judge finds someone to blame. Oh, probably it's marketing's fault. The stickler says, if you haven't used my Excel sheet, the numbers are probably wrong. The avoider asks, guys, shall I present last month's sales numbers because they are so excellent? The victim starts to cry softly. Why it happens with me? Why it happens with me? And the hyper-rational pokes the victim under the table and says, if you want to cry, better go to the bathroom, okay? Because you're disturbing the meeting. The hypervigilant turns his back to the table, picks up his cell phone, calls his wife and says, cancel the next Saturday dinner because I don't think we're going to have money to pay for that. The hyperachiever tells the boss, no problem, I can stay overnight working to get the client back. And the pleaser says, oh no, you don't need to stay here till late. I can't stay here for you. Although she has small kids at home waiting for her. And the restless, tired of being in the same boring meeting for the 15 minutes, goes pee and on the way to the bathroom, stops to chat with friends and never comes back again. Now, guys, I'd like to hear from you. Which saboteur do you most identify with? And Janine, I think I'll need your help here because I cannot see the chat. Can you help me? Like people are telling which one they identify the most?
Yes. Okay, so feel free to use the chat group. Ekaterina says, those guys seem like all of them sit in my head. Vibehuff says controller and H achiever. Then we have Sandeep saying hyperachiever and restless. Jordan says pleaser. Charlie, I tied with the victim and the pleaser. Next person, I have a percentage of all of them and specifically the victim. Alicia says judge and hyper-vigilant.
Mm-hmm.
Next one, Steffi says stickler. Or Vibehuff also said, or maybe sometimes he's the guy who was saying the problem.
Yeah, from my experience here in China, what I see is that among the Chinese people that have this very competitive culture, the hyperachiever is always there, like at the highest level. Also, the women, they they tend to have the pleaser because we have been raised like to be the good girl, and we are always like tend to helping, putting other people's needs ahead of ours. And for foreigners that live in China, we tend to have the hypervigilant in a very high level because we are always in this uncomfortable zone because we are foreigners. So that's what I have been seeing here during these 6 years. I have been coaching people and using this assessment. Okay. So let's keep doing. Guys, when the saboteurs are controlling your life, we have this kind of tunnel vision. It means that we can only see the problem and we cannot see anything else around it. And depending on the saboteur, we can be ready to fight, like the controller, the hyper-rational, the stickler, or ready to fight, like the victim, the pleaser, the avoider. So it's extremely important to understand that there is a difference, a big difference between being able to control things and being a controller, or to help people out of generosity and helping people to guarantee that they like you. Because the saboteurs, they are always bad. There's no exception. The most common emotions related to the saboteurs, according to Shirzad Chamine, are disappointment, frustration, shame, censorship, and guilt. Just like a car that can achieve a very high speed, 200 kilometers per hour, but leaving a lot of pollution and friction along the way. A guy can be the best CEO ever because if his hyperachiever behavior. But his wife and his kids left. He doesn't have friends. He's kind of obese. He's overwhelmed. He could have been the best CEO ever and millionaire without causing so much damage around him. So now, guys, I have 2 questions for you. But I want you to ask these questions to your saboteurs, not to yourself, because you are not your saboteurs. 2 very important questions are, saboteur, what have you been serving me for? And saboteur, how have you been harming myself and others around me? Let me give me my example here, okay? I used to have this controller saboteur, really. I was really a freak controller. And this saboteur helped me to be a very successful businesswoman in Brazil, taking care of 4 kids while working like a crazy. But I used to feel so overwhelmed. I had this feeling that if I didn't do something, nobody would do that. I kept doing things for my kids. And I believe that I took a little bit of their self-confidence away because I was always like predicting problems for them and solving the problems, even before they could realize or notice that. My husband's saboteur, that's the avoider, was growing up because the more controller I was, the more avoider he was, and vice versa. And at the end, I had a breast cancer. And I'm pretty sure that I collapsed my immune system because of my stress. We saw that in Johnny's presentation. So it was very clear to me that the controller was controlling me. And that's when I decided to change. So now I'm going to give you like 1 minute to answer these two questions. Feel free to share if you feel comfortable, or just keep that to yourself. Janine, if somebody shares.
Yes. Feel free to use the chat group if you feel like sharing. Otherwise, you can just reflect for yourself. But as Chris said, be honest to yourself. This activity is for you.
Thanks, Janine. People are not sharing. I'm curious to understand if
maybe they're still thinking. Alicia would like to share.
Exactly.
I feel like it's a little hard for me to ask the question and get the answers because I'm speaking to so many of them at once.
Yeah. But is there anyone that you feel like, okay, this is the strongest? Okay, let's keep going, okay? Because now that you probably realize that how bad is to believe that we need a saboteur. Because when I give this assessment to my clients, they tend to think like, okay, I'm a controller, okay, I'm a hyperachiever, and like embracing the saboteur. And then I help them to notice how bad is to keep believing that this behavior is a good behavior. So now we are ready to understand that the saboteurs, they live in the left side of the brain, the logical one. Because we exercise these muscles every minute in our life. We are planning, we are thinking ahead, we're very rational and logical. And the right side is becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. The only way to access the power of the sage or the wisdom that we have inside of us to defeat the saboteur. And Johnny said in his talk that wisdom is to know how to implement something and that we can change our beliefs. So we need to start to be more in our right side of the brain. And I want to do that with you right now before I start to share what the sage believes, okay? So now, guys, take a deep breath. And I'd like to invite you right now to activate the right side of the brain. And we do that by accessing our senses. And you can do that along the day by when you take a shower, instead of taking a shower and thinking what I'm going to do after that, what I'm going to say in that meeting, what I'm going to do in this plan, just feel the water in your body. You can use your senses all the time. Right now, for example, I'd like you to focus on the image in your laptop. This brain here. Observe the details, the colors, the white points. And now you can close your eyes and hear the sounds around you. Feel the taste in your mouth. Feel the smells. Feel the weight of your body on the chair. Take another deep breath and open your eyes and try to keep this state right now for the rest of the presentation. The sage believes that there is good in every fact of life. Everything can be turned into a gift or an opportunity. Mr. Shihad Shamin, he doesn't begin any meeting without doing this exercise first. He's a CEO, he's a coach. He coaches the most important CEOs and the most important companies of the world. He begins his meetings with this exercise to change the mindset of people that are in the meeting. So that's a question right now. I'd like you to answer for me, like in the chat. If you were one of the participants of the sales meeting that we saw, what would be a good outcome from almost losing the main client? Can you find something good about that?
Feel free to use the chat group again. While everyone's writing down and answering the question, Chris, I'm just sharing what else was shared in the chat group. It didn't, about the saboteur, it didn't serve me at all. It served others, but not me. And someone else said, "You are amazing, Chris. Loved your voice, too soothing and comforting. Wish we could hear you more." I'm not sure. Achiever sometimes is also not good. I want to change that a little bit. I think someone else said, "I think I'm a controller."
Nobody can find anything. Nobody can find anything good about losing.
Oh no, now it's popping in. Tian Tian said, "Good thing of losing the client can release a lot of time for the company." Alicia said, "Benefit of the cartoon problem. We now have unified focus together to solve a problem to connect us." Clement, "Better opportunities." Jordan, "Maybe there is another better client that will replace them." Sandeep, "The client could be a controller, so good riddance." Jackie, "Analyze the reason and whether it is possible or get it back." Charlie, "Make an opportunity for another client to come, more fitting for the company and the team to reevaluate." Next one, "I would think about getting another client." Ekaterina, "Well, losing a customer is a stressful situation from the first side, but agree, new opportunities come then." Hannah, "Can explore other better clients."
Great, guys. You see, imagine this meeting is starting with people thinking like that. Don't you think that good ideas, new ideas would come easier than if you are like focused on the problem? So first thing about getting rid of the saboteurs, find the good. Second thing, empathize. This morning, Chris Williamson explained that empathy is essential for great leaders. According to Brené Brown, that I think you have heard about her, I call her the queen of vulnerability. She says that empathy is more than only putting yourself in other people's shoes. It's try to feel what the person is feeling. And for that, we need to go to our past events to be able to identify the emotion that was there. And that's why empathize is hard, because we need to get in touch with the bad emotion in our hearts. And sometimes we are not willing to do that. So thinking back to the first example of the boss shouting at you, I'd like you to try to empathize with him, going back to a moment when you shouted to someone in front of other people. And try to understand what kind of emotions he could be feeling to lose control like that. I would say like he was feeling really disrespected because we arrived late. Or he was tired because it's late in the night or late, early in the evening, in the morning. He was feeling not in control. Anybody has any other emotions that you feel, that you believe that he could be feeling? Nobody, Janine?
We still have some other comments from earlier. Yeah. Well, from earlier, we still had, I think the saboteur is not always bad. We have to know how to deal with it. As humans, we need our right and left brain. Maybe some trouble at home or personal life that was shared now. Disrespected, said someone else. Someone else said he could be feeling frustrated. He might have a lot to deal with already.
Yeah. When we are acting from this position that we try to understand what's happening to the other person, we are using the wisdom of the sage and not the critical voice of the saboteur. The third thing is to explore. When we were children, we knew how to explore with curiosity and fascination for the new discoveries, right? So if you give a new toy to a kid, just observe what's going to happen. But then what happens is that the world starts to ask us to follow the rules and not using our imagination anymore. Later, we are only reading the social media posts that confirm our point of views, and now we are having a lot of examples in the world, the power of social media. And then we only accept arguments that confirm our assumptions. And at the end, we listen to try to answer people and not try to understand what they are saying. So when we explore, we allow ourselves to see facts from different perspectives. What is there about this situation that I'm not seeing? Which are the possibilities that happened to this boss that yelled to me that I'm not seeing? He has a bad day, he is like overwhelmed, or he has a father that was always yelling at him. What I'm not seeing. The fourth one is innovate. If we keep doing the same things we used to do, we are going to get the same results. They say that this Einstein said that. What I know is that our mind loves what is familiar. And most of the time, we don't take ourselves out of our comfort zones. So the boss yelled at me, what can I do about this whole situation that I have never thought about before? Can I invite him to have lunch with me and talk? Can I ask other people to get together and then talk to him and ask him to change his behavior? What can I do that I'm not doing until now? And the fifth one is follow your values. Your values are like a compass. When you don't know what to do, follow them. That's Tony Robbins' advice. In this situation, I would say that for me, harmony and peace are some of my main values. So what does it mean? It means that I will never yell back to anybody. Not because I'm scared of the person, but because I believe that aggressiveness generates more aggressiveness. So although I don't know what to do exactly right now because he's yelling to me, I know that I'm not going to yell back. Because I need to take things peacefully. And that's not the avoider. That's my value. And one more thing before I end, and we start the Q&A, and I can address the question that saboteurs sometimes they are good. You will never know what the boss was really feeling to shout at you like that. You don't know his past life. You don't know if his father used to yell at him. You don't know if his son is in the hospital with COVID. You don't know. But it's up to us to look at this situation from a perspective that doesn't activate our saboteurs. Looking from the sage perspective that's very generous, we remain calm and positive. And from this position, we are able to take wise decisions. That's all I have to share with you guys. And I'd like to hear from you about the questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris. That was a very nice session as the last session of the day, right? I'm sure you guys would agree with me. Okay, we have about, let's say, 7 more minutes for questions and answers. Unmute yourself or send your question in a chat group and ask Chris anything. Who would like to go first?
This is Christina. So I want to ask, yes, well, this session it was good to share that every one of us have a saboteur, right? And, but then what I didn't, understand through the presentation is what we should do with it, right? Because from my perspective, maybe I'm biased, right? But as a physician, I know that we do have both brains, right? And then they're there in different situation, in different level. At least this is how I experimented it, right? But then the question is what this presentation is about. Is it to just let us know that we have a saboteur, or how we are going to deal with it if we are you are a coach, right? So what had you seen about it? Because from my perspective is that the saboteur is not something that you can avoid. Is there? It's just is there at different level in different situation, right? In different situation, you will feel that the vigilance will speak louder. The judge will speak louder, something like that, right? So that is what I feel. And about your question, how it's impacted in your life. For me, actually, most of the time it's help more than damage. But then the key is how you have to know how to use it and what situation it is, right? For example, if it is a situation where you have to make a decision, a difficult decision, or you are in a meeting where you have to represent the judge or the vigilant or the controller or something like that, right? But I think that that is my question. What is the message that you want to give us here with the saboteur?
Yeah, the message is that we all have some behaviors that are bad behaviors, that are behaviors that are not helping us to make the best decisions. Sometimes because you want to control everything, sometimes because we cannot be in the same job more than 6 months because you always want to change, because every time that something bad happens, I want to give up, I don't keep going. And Shizachimi, he, from studies and from science and from surveys and from his clients, he knows that there are 10 most common behaviors. And from my experience as a coach, I can see that too. And this is only a framework, Christina. And I don't like very much assessments that make people to embrace and think I am like this, I'm like that. I like to consider that a framework that helps you to understand your behaviors. If you feel like you don't have anything that is bothering you or anything that is stopping you from having good relationships or from having better decisions, that's okay. But some people they have, and this framework help them to identify what is happening. And sometimes it's very useful to go to the past a little bit and understand why you had to you have to develop this behavior. The controller that I had came from probably the relationship with my parents. My parents had a very, very bad relationship, like very conflictual. So I never know when they were going to fight. So I was always controlling them. And my mom used to be a victim. So she could stop talking to me for 1 week. So I also had to be controlling her face all the time. It means when I had my therapy for 5 years, I never lay down because I had to keep looking to my therapist's face to control her all the time. So this workshop is about identifying this kind of behavior, because this is the first thing that we need to get rid of them. And then to understand that the right side of the brain that's always like left aside, because we need to be like achieving and doing things all the time, we need to access them more to have a balance.
Because of the time, I'm gonna move in here. We have a few more questions, 2 more questions for you. And then we gotta move on to the last part. I'm sure some of you would love to win some cool coaching sessions or online trainings with our coaches. Okay, Alicia was asking, when someone has multiple saboteurs, how do you recommend going about getting rid of them? Most severe one first, easier one first, one by one, multiple? What's your recommendation, Chris?
It doesn't matter which saboteur do you have, because the medicine is the same to all of them. That's find always the good. Empathize with yourself, with other people, and with the situation. Explore, look from different perspectives. Our emotions are connected to the meaning that we give to things. If you give a bad meaning, you're going to have a bad emotion, and then we are going to react from a bad emotion. If you give a good meaning, you're going to have a good emotion. And nothing good comes from a bad emotion. Innovate. We always do the same thing. We repeat, people change, people leave companies because of the boss, not because of the company, because I hate my boss, and they go to another company and they have the same boss or the same person doing the same thing, and they don't change. They have always the same problem. So try to do something different. Try to innovate. And then follow your values. When you don't know what to do, think about your main values. Honesty, generosity. I don't know what are your values, but follow them. So it doesn't matter if you have the hyperachiever or the victim, and they change, okay? Because now I'm not a controller anymore, but because I have a new career and I feel a little bit insecure sometimes, I'm becoming a perfectionist, but I'm very aware of that. So when I become like taking more time than I should to do something, I just stop myself, because I say, okay, that's not me running the show, that's the saboteur running the show.
Okay, last question, and then we're gonna move on. Ekaterina was asking, what if I always try to be polite and think about other people's feelings, but I don't get the same attitude from them to me? I often feel that such thing is unfair, and this is really disappointing. How should I change my mind in this case? Do I understand the situation wrong? Ooh, I've been through this too. Good
Yeah, that's what
question.
I said. That's what I said. The pleaser is always like the very feminine saboteur. And I recommend you to read a book called The Wolf Eats the Good Girls from a German. Do you know, Janine? This German writer. And it's all about the pleaser. The pleaser is really complicated because we are raised like that. We are raised like that. So what I can tell you is that the first thing is that noticing and realizing and being aware that, okay, maybe I'm doing that not because I'm very generous, but because I depend on the approval and the love of other people. And from there, you can start to change. And this is a matter of practice also, okay? Okay, if someone invites you to go to Starbucks and have a coffee and you want to go back home because you're really tired, just say no. The first time is going to hurt and you're going to, oh my God, this person's not going to talk to me anymore. But try to practice, because this is the way you are going to understand that you don't need to have this kind of behavior. And, you know, I also have a saboteur that I just didn't show my last chart of the presentation with my QR code, my website, and my email. I just forgot it. And if you need help, guys, please just get in touch with me, and it would be really a pleasure to help you to understand it, to answer the other questions, and I'm really available, okay?
All of our coaches are normally in the WeChat group. So if you use WeChat, you're in the WeChat group, you can connect with them directly there. Tomorrow we will send out the one-pagers and the contact details so that you can really get in contact with our amazing coaches. Okay, Chris, thank you so much for this amazing session. We're closing the official sessions up here. Thank you so much.